All right, so we're in the CMS track. We're talking about ways to use WordPress not as a blog, but to accomplish some other thing. And one of the things that we love about WordPress, and one of the things that actually makes the title using WordPress to drive a library catalog perhaps a little bit ironic, is that library catalogs are everything that WordPress is not. Wow, I actually have more nods of recognition than I expected on that one. Are there people involved in libraries here? Yay! Yay! Where? I got to stop and ask. Where are you?
I worked at NC State where they developed the Endeca catalog for
Right.
a while, and now I'm at NYU where I'm not involved in the library. I'm very familiar.
So the Endeca
It is
catalog.
library catalog.
I was so angry that that NC State launched theirs a month before I launched mine, and then I realized that they got the chance to answer all sorts of questions that I didn't have to worry about. All right, enough of inside baseball. WordPress is everything that libraries are not. First of all, it's free in the library world, despite having only about 9,000 libraries, public and academic, in the U.S. Which obviously is a lot smaller than WordPress, which is now running perhaps many times that as many sites. The cost of library software is really high. So, and they're just now starting to emerge some viable open source options that are built within the library community. But WordPress, of course, I say it's the software people use when they want to write, rather than when they want to fiddle with the server. It's easy to use. It's really easy to install, or you can install it without having to actually get set up on WordPress.com without having to install. And from my perspective, one of the most important features of it is that it's easy to extend. That plugin architecture, that plugin API, is an incredibly important feature of WordPress that I think makes it unique among software in that category. And though it's easy to overlook, the social aspects of WordPress being built to be internet native. That is, every post has a permalink. It's amazing that in the library world, the idea of having a book record with a permalink is kind of foreign until relatively recently. And it's meant to be indexed. It was designed to be indexed by search engines from the start. Library systems generally actually excluded. They put in a robots.txt that excluded search engines oftentimes. And so again, WordPress is everything that libraries are not, and you got to love it for that. But really, to emphasize it, I wanted to point out that this, until relatively recently, was considered a really good. And I wish I had somebody else's example, because there are some more ridiculous ones than this. This one's actually mine. This was considered a really good interface for searching a library catalog, where you have these, many fields that you had to understand, and you didn't know if you had to fill these out or not. This is what library catalogs looked like at the time. And you can imagine that the internet world, where people were expecting to put in a natural language search term and get back good results, this is a really foreign thing. Those are just worlds apart. On the other hand, library data is actually really exciting to me. Even though it's awkwardly coded, these are file formats and encoding formats that have been around since the 1960s. And there's a lot of weird stuff that you encounter because of that. Nonetheless, once you do get through those weird things, library data is rich with metadata and really good descriptions. And we have lots of it. A small library, it has 10,000 records. Which just in terms of volume, even if only a percentage of those are well described, you get a lot of good data in that. And I don't remember how big the New York Public Library is. I think it's 6 million records. Anyway, but all of that data is just locked up in a place where it can't get out, because the systems that we have don't allow it. They're not built to integrate with the web as it is. So it's screaming to escape. What do we do? And this is one of those slides that look kind of lame when it goes from a Mac to a PC, but we'll at least the equivalent to symbol showed up correctly. Anyway, so all right, what about WordPress? Well, it's a database, it's a tool to create database-driven websites, right? And what is it about the library catalogs? Well, those are database-driven websites. Why do they have to be so different? Why do you need to create a unique tool to solve a common task? Perhaps we can use a common tool to solve a unique task. And so if you go into this with the assumption that a blog post equals a catalog record, suddenly a new world opens up. So let's see how well some of these transitions work here. But here is a using the excerpt view of it from like a search or something like that. Here's a catalog record as a blog post, and we've got a lot of stuff that we would recognize from the WordPress world. Here we're talking about Yankees, Giants, and Dodgers, and I took the screenshot a long time ago. I am using New York stuff. It just happened to be on the screenshot, and I was quite happy with it. So that's the title of the post. Well, title of a book, title of a post, those are nearly equivalent. You can edit that, and you can check the comments on it. There are none right now. But in between here, this is the post body. And we're going to look a little bit deeper in that, but even though this is very structured, as far as WordPress is concerned, that's just the post body. And I've got a little plugin that's actually creating that structure and doing it. But these tags, I did say library data had a lot of metadata in it. These tags, if we were able to mouse over them, you'd see an awkward URL. It wouldn't just look like a tag URL that it was looking up. And that's because we're extending the taxonomy system. This started long before, I started work on this long before WordPress had adopted tags, and back when the official position for WordPress is that nobody needs tags, use categories instead. So I was kind of hurt when WordPress started to build on a tag system, and then they did it better than I had, and I was kind of happy. Nonetheless, so these are, this extends the built-in WordPress taxonomy system. Look at that weird transition. So that here we're looking at a search or a browse screen. You can see that this particular taxonomy is called format. Here's a taxonomy called author, and up there, just out of sight, is a taxonomy called subject. So we've got author, format, subject, taxonomies on screen here, and these are, as far as I'm concerned, the way tag clouds. And here's a display of it in a list, and there's a display of it as a cloud. These tag clouds change what they represent based on what's in the current found set. So you have this opportunity to browse through your collection or search through your collection using those taxonomies as facets to the collection. And so in this case, this is in yellow because somebody's clicked on it. History is in yellow because it's been clicked on, and you can see that appear. So in this particular thing, we have 22 items in this found set that match the 4 criteria that we have in the search. So we entered in a keyword looking for history. We narrowed it down to subject history just to make sure of that, 20th century at that, and those materials that are available in book form. So we're looking at those particular facets of the collection. And we're looking at a set that matches all those criteria. So one of the things that I was able to do through WordPress plugin is take all of these posts, combine that with the taxonomy system, and create a little bit of UI to see these things that WordPress is doing internally, and create a really sophisticated way to search. In the library world, a lot of people search by example. Ooh, I want things like that, is what they say. There's actually some weird language that gets used in libraries, so it's often easier for you to recognize what you want when you see it than it is to know what you want before you see it, or to say what you want before you get a chance to see it. So in this case, what we're doing, because we have those, because we have this opportunity to see that found set, we get to narrow that, and we're going to see this live because the internet is working better than better than some things. But This particular thing, this is where we're typing in that search. Sorry, it looks a little fuzzy, but we type in the search for history. One of the things that I've added to this world is is doing the live search. But here again, we're using that taxonomy, and we're searching the terms in WordPress to make sure to see if there are matches there. And so we can do a keyword, natural language keyword search for history, but we also know that we have subjects that match that term. And so that's coming straight out of the WordPress Taxonomy system. So all together, that screen looks like this, and this was a template that people could use back before it was Scriblio was built to be a little bit smarter about not requiring a custom-built template. And this was a very generic-looking thing, and nobody actually ever implemented this, or actually some people did, but nobody that I'm going to demonstrate looks like that. Here's Collingswood, New Jersey, not too far away. This is their catalog. And so this is, they have about 60,000 records in their library. It's a smallish town for New Jersey. And so this is their catalog. This is the thing. Here again, this is the title of the post. We get some standard WordPress tools there. We're automatically fetching the book and some other details, and those are the facets that we can use to narrow down when we're browsing the collection. Sorry for the automatic transitions that work so poorly. We're going to look at these two sites in detail in a moment, doing it live. But here's another collection. The cool thing is once you build that technology and you decide all database-driven websites are basically the same, well, why do you only track book data? And so here we're doing it as a collection of archival images from a relatively small school in New Hampshire. And so all of this data, they're doing the original cataloging, they're entering that data rather than getting it the way the library sites do from another system where they have that inventory, but they can't present that inventory efficiently. In this case, they're creating their inventory of the materials that they have in their collection inside WordPress. And what I love about this particular example is that they wanted hovers. So as you hover on an image, you get to see the larger image. Here's the first image catalog that launched within WordPress and Scriblio that I was involved with. And it's one that I'm really fond of because it shows something that's easy to overlook, I think, for us who have been blogging for a while. Have people been using WordPress for more than a year typically? Yeah, that's what I figured. And so you're familiar with so many of those social features that make blogging and using WordPress actually kind of fun, the comments especially. I cannot overstate the value of the comments. This single form, leave a comment, enter your name. This is a standard WordPress comment form, and you could probably recognize the theme that this came from. In fact, of the previous 3 sites, all of them were built with very slight modifications to themes that you can find pretty commonly. This, I think, is Cutline. But anyway, the simple ability to contribute a comment to when you have that large a collection of data. We know how the internet works. We know how letting users contribute back to our knowledge of the collection is really valuable. This is new to libraries. They're just beginning to experience this, and so I love this particular collection, both because it has these kind of strange images. I can't tell you what this woman is doing, but it looks like a bowling ball shaped piece of paper if you look at it closely. And here we have comments on that particular article, and Jackie Nadeau, I don't know who Jackie is, but she writes back that she must have known something about this person. What her authority is, we don't know, but the comment made us go back and look at the image and the text that was written on the image that we don't see here, and we confirmed, yes, it's actually harp, not heart. And so one of the people who's responsible for building this collection has been really good in terms of following the comments and interacting with the community. So we have better data, of course, because of the users. when the users can contribute, it adds so much value to the collection. But it sounds awkward to say that in this community. Just be aware of how valuable that is and how easily we take it for granted. This is my absolute favorite image, not because of the image, but because when we launched this collection in 2006, we knew from the start that, or I had said from the start that I will believe this has been successful when I know that when somebody writes in and says, that's my grandfather. Now it's actually worth pausing for a moment. This collection of images is from a paper company that operated in the northern reaches of New Hampshire and some parts of Canada and Maine, and photographed their stuff, photographed their activities in ways that are kind of surprising in terms of the volume of photos that we have. And these photos sat from 1885 to 1885 to 1965 is about the range of the photos that we have. And from 1965 through to 2006 or so, they sat and nobody had seen them. Nobody knew what was on them or what value there was there. But we had this opportunity to get them out there just before people who would have recognized, the family perhaps of these people had passed on. So I'd said, when somebody writes in and says, that's my grandfather, I know I will have been successful with this. And so back in April 2007, one of the earlier comments on the collection, because it launched at the end of 2006, this guy Ron, again, I don't know who he is, but he knew something about it, and he gave us some understanding for what the industrial process this photo represents. And so we're learning a lot about the industrial history of the place that, and the oral history is being created here, that we didn't know strictly from the photos. But then Fred writes in not too long afterwards, says the man on the right, this guy, is Roger Dignard. But he's not sure of the spelling, whatever. But now we start to have the identification. I'm starting to feel pretty good about the way this is going. And then sometime later, Roger Dignard writes in. Now, this is not the same Roger as that. It's the nephew to that fellow. And he confirms, yes, that's my uncle. And this is the comment that made me feel as though this had truly been a successful collection. And that the people who were looking at it truly valued it, or the people that are in it are being recognized. So actually, before I get off that, I want to point out another thing that may be hard to recognize while we're in the middle of one of the largest cities in the world. This community that uses this has no access to broadband. It's because the mill closed. Or was sold in the 60s and then has recently completely closed. The level of the economic and socioeconomic indicators for the likelihood that these people would be using technology are very low. The age is kind of high, home values are very low, the access to broadband very low. Nonetheless, we are getting an incredible participation from the community and looking at the IP addresses that people are using. These are not just people who have left the community but are still there. And anecdotally, we have information that says that this is the service that has given people a reason to buy a computer and get access to the internet, get online, just so they can see this collection of it's now I think 30,000 images that we have online. And so they're sitting and waiting for that download time to just to see have the chance at seeing somebody. So that's that one. So basically, what we have here is that WordPress plus libraries equals Scriblio. But why does it have to be library data at all? Is one of my questions. And here we have a project that that I'm working on, and it's actually over a deadline, but whatever. Here we're representing. Or the notion is that we're going to represent the degree programs of the institution in a format that's really easy to search and to navigate. And so here, somebody wrote this text and used a regex that you can see failed here to link the course numbers and create a URL for those course numbers. And if you click them, you might get to this particular record. Previously, we were looking at a page representing that major at our university. Here, we're looking at a page representing the course. And so we've gone from one major, one degree program equals one blog post. Here we have one course equals one blog post. And of course, one blog post equals one page on the internet, which as far as Google is concerned is really important. And in this case, again, we have all this linkability. We're looking at the individual records here, but if we click on one of those things, here, this is all derived information at the moment. We can put in cataloged information, but here, one blog post equals one person. And so we're clicking all around and through here, going from going through the programs, courses, and faculty of the institution, trying to make that easy to explore. And as we can see, there's actually just about anything to look at. There's actually a lot of fielded metadata that you can use. So in this case, it's presented by the PE department, which needs a human name. Deriving some information about the courses, we know that these are the disciplines that are in it. So there's a lot of cool stuff that we can get out of that. And again, this is library data. This is presenting pretty much any data that you have lots of and you have some good information about. And it's still the same Scriblio. So on the inside, you might ask, okay, that's great, what do I do with it? And the point that I might say is, if you're not interested necessarily in libraries and archives, you can still use it in the way I showed. You can create schemas to make it work. This particular screen is probably maybe a little bit too low contrast to see. But one of the things this Scriblio adds to WordPress is when you're editing a post, kind of creates a new post type. And you can edit a post that'll trigger or you can add a new post, and in doing that, it'll trigger the plugin to add this fielded stuff where you can track really complex. I say sophisticated when I mean it's easy, but you do great things with it, and complex when I mean, well, gosh, that's a lot of fields to fill in. And so in this particular case, we have, in place of where you'd enter the post content, we have all of this fielded metadata. Now this one is really complex because most of that data, for book records especially, you never edit. The Library of Congress generally creates that information, or there are a handful of organizations, Library of Congress being the most recognizable, probably, that create that information, and then everybody just copies it from it. So here we're looking at stuff for primarily for books. And so we can see this is the author, creator instead of author, because it could be an editor or something else. And so we're naming the people involved with this particular work. And this is the information from which the metadata that you see on screen that you can search, and the facets that you can search, is derived. This goes on forever. However, it's all, the form itself is automatically generated from the schema. Let's just zoom in on one of those. I should have done that earlier. A little bit easier to see. So Scriblio has a number of pieces. The plugin itself, the primary plugin that's called Scriblio, has the tools that allow you to do faceted searching and browsing, to explore those collections and use the metadata to dig deep into a collection or search well. So that adds, for the most part, the user experience pieces and a little bit of the support necessary to handle the more complex data that is necessary for these things. You still have to define a schema. The schema are the rules about how the information is cataloged. So what information are you tracking? And from that complex form, what of that information is entered into the taxonomy system, which is where the facets are taken from. And then you may be done just with that, but if you want to connect it, as for the library example, if you want to connect it with an external system where your primary catalog is, like the library inventory system, you also have to have a connector which interacts with the schema, although not necessarily directly with the primary plugin, and connects with the external system. And that relationship can be, if you write it, if you write it to be this way, it can be a two-way relationship between WordPress and that external system, so that changes made within WordPress can be reflected inside the external system. One external system that where that actually could be kind of interesting is Flickr. So creating a using Scriblio to create a new view of your collection in Flickr and make it easy to do the faceted searching and browsing in there. And then as you make changes to that, send back the machine tags that Flickr uses. Send that back to the original image. It's worth knowing that because all of this was not built when we launched that collection of the paper company images in 2006, we cataloged those images in Flickr. But it was actually before they had, I think before they'd even launched machine tags, so we were using the machine tag format. There's a volunteer who's been doing all of the cataloging, had to type in the machine tag format in quotes, which would then, because Scriblio at the time did not support editing within WordPress, it would then just format the record and insert the post. So all of that collection is in Flickr, and that's one way that I use it. So I think I have a moment or two to actually do a reasonable demo of a couple of things, which would be a whole lot more useful, I think. So this is the Collingswood Public Library, again in Collingswood, New Jersey, and I can't remember. This theme I'm sure you probably recognize, but one of the things I love is this giant search box that they have right there. So as you start typing, it's here we're doing title matches against that, and it's a little bit crazy. Harry Potter has a whole lot of matches that should truncate some of the results earlier, but that's evolution. So let's we'll click on one of those results. And we were able to network went down. And so here we are. We got directly to that one thing. They have 60,000 records, but we were able to get directly to almost directly, that is, to the thing that mattered. Here we're looking for those things that are that match the title, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. And as it turns out, well, they have the movie, and they have an audiobook, and they have the paper book. So here we're looking at that, and again, as far as WordPress is concerned, this is just a blog post. The structure of that blog post, like these parts of it, that's all being generated using the content filter at the time that this record is displayed, based on the structured data that you see when I showed you the edit page. In fact, I don't really want to edit this one, but anyway. And then this availability information is actually coming live from the inventory system that they use. And so it's cached for I think 6 hours, but it's known and being given by that inventory system. A lot of data, like I said, in libraries. So we also know that people who looked at this particular item, and this is using another WordPress plugin that's unrelated to Scriblio. Here we can we found that other people looking at one item are looking at another item. And here's one of the great things that I love about using, again, a common tool for a specific task. That is, because there are people using WordPress for other things than libraries, there are people developing plugins and tools to do things that they find interesting that may have an application to libraries, but they didn't build it. They still built it, and we can use it, but they didn't build it for libraries, so it's not like we have to wait until that technology finds its way into the library world. And so there's that one record, and here actually showing some of the browsing. So we can look at, we were the internet failed. Yeah.
What about data interchange? Can you get data and metadata in and out of a system like this?
Yes, so you can obviously get it in that connector piece. That's the place where you can get it. What you may be asking, and I can't say yes to, is can you get an RDF view of this of an individual record or from of a group of records or some other semantic web happy sort of thing? The answer is not right now, but that is certainly that's one of the next big things. It's not user facing, so I haven't really focused on it. But there's no reason why any of these records can't be represented that way. And so here we have here we're doing a browse of their entire collection. So here's the 57,973 records, and you can go. You can click the next page, and that really should have a number on it, but it's using another theme. And you can click the next page all the way back to the first record that's in the catalog, the first record entered into the catalog that's still there. I'm sorry.
Well, my question was going to be, so there are 57,000, whatever, approximately blog posts entered in the back-end admin for WordPress, and my question is really, and this could be applied to any application of Scriblio, I guess, like, are there ever any problems with scalability or with like the amount
Yes.
of information, like using a common tool for this specific purpose?
So when you get to, at this size, this is actually using regular MySQL with a relatively small number of optimizations specific to this task. It's important that you have object caching on, which is used pretty regularly throughout this. But the important thing is, as you get beyond 100,000 records, then MySQL's full text index it doesn't really perform as well, and I've been using. I suddenly forgot the Sphinx by Isaac Askanoff or something like that. Which is a full-text indexing engine, which I've used as an alternative to MySQL's full-text index. However, I only have one site where that's actually really important. So here we're looking at the entire collection. We'll narrow it down to detective and mystery stories, and we can obviously we know that a lot of these detective and mystery stories are fiction. In fact, if you see nonfiction there, I'd be surprised. But we're combining the format and the genre of the material into one thing. So we have audio cassette. There's a lot of data in library records. It's not necessarily well normalized, surprisingly, especially for format. And so that's kind of what why I've mixed them here to get around that. But we can look at those items that are in juvenile fiction and explore that. So here we have the 402 items that are detective and mystery stories as appropriate for juveniles. This information is coming not directly from the catalog, but because the connector that works in this case can also get information and join that information with other things. This comes from Amazon most likely, and the awards are coming from another service provider. So we can get all that stuff. So that's adding faceted searching and browsing to WordPress. And then this particular collection is unfortunately mostly manuscript items that have been cataloged, so that's kind of sad. But that's that. So that's Scriblio.
Another question. So the integration with an external host like Flickr or something like that, is that because Flickr will take care of the hosting for images, the media hosting, and then it'll allow Scriblio WordPress to just power the organization in a customized way, plus you have your own property where all of that is organized. Is that kind of the reason behind it, the advantage as opposed to hosting it yourself or whatever?
actually, the paper company collection is the images that are served are actually, we have to, because of Flickr's policies, we have to copy them. We don't want to link back to the original images. So we copy them onto our local server, and all of them are there. It's just that when that collection was started, Flickr offered a UI that allowed us to enter data in a way that we weren't able to do within WordPress. Does anybody remember structured blogging from 2005, 2006? Yeah, and so once upon a time, everybody figured that micro formats were awesome, and I love micro formats, and you'll see a lot of micro format related stuff in this. But the idea was that if you were reviewing something like a book or a movie or something, you'd format your blog post according to certain standards so that search engines would recognize it. Now this is the sort of thing that now Yelp and CitySearch and everybody else has taken advantage of, and so in their databases they represent that information in a really, really good way for search engines to be able to extract that information. And you get these rich snippets in Google and other places that'll show you, this is what it's about, and this is what people think of this restaurant. So structured blogging kind of started, that's what it turned into. It started in like 2005, I think. And there was this WordPress plugin that went nowhere. But nonetheless, that was the first example. That was in like the WordPress 1.5 days. That was the first example of kind of what I'm doing. On the other hand, I hate structured blogging as it is. So. But because that was the one example that was doing what I needed to do in terms of entering fielded data in a structured way, and it was built for WordPress 1.5, and it wasn't nobody brought it forward. I had to figure out some things about the WordPress interface and the edit tools that took me a while longer than I wasn't ready to do in 2006. So we started entering that data inside Flickr. Now, this particular collection, and I'm going to be bold, and it's not an HTTPS login. No, I'm not going to log in on that one. Forgive me. But this one, all of the data that they're entering, it looks better than the paper company collection. All of the data that they're entering is entirely, and everything is stored entirely within that WordPress instance. So it was just a matter of timing and development for WordPress.
When it says link or embed at the bottom of the page, what does embed mean? Does it mean the whole record, or? So you can grab the HTML to embed the image. Of course, this was taken directly from YouTube, where YouTube expanded its market dominance by making it really easy to reuse their content. And so why not do that? If we want stuff to be shareable, why not make that easy? That's just the image, is it?
It's just the image, but it actually includes. Although I have to admit, this particular one is just the image, no link, because you can see in the HTML there's no AH. That is supposed to be, you've pointed out above, that is supposed to be a link back to the source that it came from. Yes?
Can you describe how the data gets ingested into Scriblio from the app?
So,
is it XML?
It depends on that's why the connector is actually not I'm going to go back to that. That's why the connector is not part of Scriblio itself. You can write any PHP code that's compatible with this environment to do anything. So you can grab that data via XML, which the bits that I showed you that are getting data from Amazon, there it's getting that data via XML. And so that one connector, actually it's multiple connectors. You can have multiple connectors working on the same schema. And so, actually, one of the things that we see as we go over here is, let me go back to the front page. These records don't have book jackets. These are generated book jackets that come from a service that I wrote specifically for it. And what I'm presuming is that these records were just added to the catalog, perhaps today or within the past 24 hours or so. And the connector is constantly out there looking for new records. And once it gets a new record, it puts it in the collection with perhaps less information than it would have after the other connector, which goes and gets data from Google, Amazon, Open Library, and Library of Thing. That's where it finds a book jacket and other stuff. And so, but that does not work in real time. So the first thing that happens is the record gets ingested into the system, and then asynchronously to that, that other connector is looking for records that it has not enhanced with additional data, and then enhances it. And that's how we get to here. Actually, here we have something. This record, I know it's been enhanced with the other connector because it has a book jacket, but also it adds a lot of tags. And so we can see creator. Here's one, if you can see down here. So we can click on that and see all the works that get the Time Magazine Best Books of the Year award. And so let's just go ahead and click on that. That I know came from Library Thing, which is a social cataloging service, which is kind of weird. One of the things that actually I need to work on performance-wise, how I said it's getting the availability information live, and though it's cached, I need to turn that into an AJAX thing, because as we display the records, it's actually going out to that remote system and delaying the display of those things while it goes and fetches that information. So I need to turn that into something where it goes and gets that via AJAX instead of delaying the initial display. But here we go. We're looking at all those things that are Time Magazine's best books of the year. And we can probably narrow that down by year. Sometimes there's weird data. Anyway, so that's that. Please.
I'll ask the question that you spoke about earlier for the benefit of everybody, but I'm coming from a WordPress MU perspective, so users, and I know you're an expert in the users area. And I'm wondering if you could talk to the ease of or difficulty involved with Scriblio in terms of users entering their own documents according to your determined schema. And I'm thinking of maybe skinning something that doesn't look like that complex back end that you showed us, but more maybe a form for them. That's one. And then on the other end of it, other users making use of that information. So here you have books, but they're not the actual books. I'm talking about maybe professional documents being uploaded by a user, used by another user, so we're talking viewers and or downloading, that kind of thing.
So, two-part question, as I see it. How easy is it to distribute, to make the act of the traditionally very librarian-like act of cataloging data, how easy is it to make that, to distribute that to a large group of people? And then the second one being, how easy is it to integrate other media? So, was that it?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Uploading and then using content.
So here is a completely undeveloped and incredibly ugly Scriblio implementation that I needed a way to track mentions of Plymouth State University in the media and capture scans of that material, because we have a student who's doing that. So I created this very, very simple one, and this is going to redirect to an HTTPS or it should, so I'm happy to show it. And the person entering this, again, it's not a good answer because it's a really ugly. There's a lot of ugliness about it. Slowly. Wow. Apparently we're going to wait on that one. And then in this case, the way that I'm embedding the media is limited only by, it's actually being embedded in the WordPress post field. And so I'm using the fielded data that Scriblio manages along with the WordPress post content field. And so that image is actually just dropped in. It's an image attached to that particular post. And so it takes advantage of more of the traditional WordPress components than the previous example, but it also makes it kind of easier to add things that were not predicted or were not supported during the initial release. Separately, I'm working on the WordPress.com video framework. I'm not working on it. The awesome folks at Automatic are working on the WordPress.com video framework, which I'm working on implementing, which provides YouTube in a box in the same way that MU provides social network in a box. So if you implement that framework, you upload an image or a video it's a pretty broad number of accepted input formats, transcodes it to a number of output formats, and gives you the embedding client and stuff like that. I cannot speak to why this is delayed, but we're kind of at the end of time, so I want to be careful about taking more time. But sorry, I didn't give you a good answer.